If you work in university maintenance, Granger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Granger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRANGER, visit Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done. If you work in university maintenance, Granger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Granger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRANGER, visit Granger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who get it done.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, I am going to recognize and shout out some of the best podcasts that came out in 2020. Now, if you're familiar with this podcast, you know that I do this annually. Just shout out some of the podcasts that I've been rocking with for the year. I'll talk to you about some of the bigger podcasts and some of the new joints, and then some of my podcast staples. I'll also tell you about, podcasts that I appeared on and, who actually showed up on the 12 Kyle podcast in the year 2020. So let me start by saying that first and foremost, 2020 has been probably the most weirdest and heaviest years ever, right? And I mean, like, going through a global pandemic. I mean, that it was something that, affected everybody. I will say this much. One of the things that has been very impressive to me is that, everybody that I'm going to talk about on this podcast adjusted, and they still put out great content. And I think there's something to be said for that, dealing with unforeseen circumstances. But nonetheless, if for some reason I don't mention you in your podcast, charge it to the head, not to the heart, charge it to the game, charge it off, whatever. But no, I'm just going to run through some of the ones that like I said, everybody, dropped a lot of dope shit in 2020. And that's something to be said and something to be proud of, actually. So first, some of the bigger and popular podcasts. And these are in no particular order. First one comes to mind is QLS, Questlove Supreme. That joint is, headed up by Questlove from The Roots. And it's a new podcast. They drop every Wednesday. And of course, on there, Team Supreme, my man Fonte, Laia, Sugar Steve, and well, Bill is in and out. But yeah, that's pretty much the cast there. And they interview a little bit of everybody. I mean, this year it was everybody from Spike Lee to God, it was almost like, who didn't he interview? To be honest. But Questlove is a very good person to listen to because, again, he's a great interviewer. And this podcast is primarily, for us music nerds, but you don't necessarily have to, because it's not just music people that they interview. Because, like, I'll give you an example. Like, he interviewed Michelle Obama, and that wasn't, they talked a little bit about music, but it wasn't really about music. But yeah, I enjoyed it, and I enjoy this podcast each week. Like I said, it drops every Wednesday, QLS. So check that out. Second one that comes to mind, obviously my boy Bomani Jones. Big fan of Bo's. I've been rocking with Bomani. Man, it's been years, man. It's almost like he feels like a friend because it feels like we go so far back. And I remember, like, when he was just really getting started. Bomani has two podcasts, The Evening Jones, which he does a live stream on Wednesdays. And he'll talk about, pop culture, music, whatever, politics. And then his sports podcast, which is tied to his, ESPN brand, The Right Time with Bomani Jones. The Right Time is every Tuesday and Thursday. Yeah, man, Bo is my dude, man. Like I said, we go back, and I'm always checking out for his stuff, man. Great content. Like I said, you're going to get, if you listen to Bomani, you're going to get a little bit of everything. Fun, humor, sports talk, a lot of good stuff. So definitely check Bo out. The next one that comes to mind, huge podcast everybody knows about, the JBP, the Joe Budden podcast, with Joe Budden, Rory, Maul, and Parks. Love the JBP, man. I think they had a interesting 2020 as they were on Spotify, and then the podcast moved from Spotify to I can't even really say what he's on. I mean, it's still on all platforms, but it's no longer on Spotify as their main platform. So in essence, at the time of this recording, the JBP are free agents. Joe's going to give you a little bit of everything, pop culture, obviously music. I have I have my own issues sometimes with, how the JBP carries on about some of the newer music, because, everybody is great, let's say like Lil Squirt Fart comes out with an album, and they'll just go on and on about how great the album is. Everybody doesn't make great music. It's okay to say somebody's album sucks, because a lot of these albums out here really do suck. But nonetheless, the JBP, they drop twice a week, every Wednesday and every Saturday. So check them out. Another podcast I was definitely checking for this year, Jemele Hill's Unbothered. Love Jemele Hill, former sports writer. You remember her from ESPN. Ventured out on her own after leaving ESPN, and she developed this great podcast. And Jemele is she's a great interviewer as well. She's had different people on her podcast as well. Her show runs about an hour. I think you'll enjoy it. She's had guests on from like Ice Cube to Questlove to whomever. I mean, like, it's just been. It doesn't necessarily have to be about music, but she's had athletes on there. She's had like Steve Kerr on, just to name a few. So I think if you enjoy Jemele, you will definitely enjoy her. And she also gives a political take at the beginning of the podcast as well, and I think that's always interesting as well. So check that out. That is exclusively on Spotify. One other podcast that was huge for me this year, that I got into, it was a series that, went, I don't know, probably about 15 episodes, I guess. And it was earlier this year. And what was weird was it was earlier this year, and so much stuff has happened this year that when I went back and looked at my notes, I actually thought it was last year that I listened to it, but it was actually this year. It's called Monster, DC Sniper. If you're familiar with the story of John Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo, those were the two accused DC snipers that, put Metro DC and Virginia, Maryland on basically on high alert and scare for the better part of about a month or so. They went on this killing spree, killing, I think it was 8 people, shooting a bunch of people. That one was really, really intriguing to listen to, because while I was alive, obviously, because this happened in the early 2000s, while I was alive when it happened, we didn't have as much access to, social media really wasn't a thing back then. So you heard about it on the news, about the DC sniper, about people just randomly, just doing random things. One lady was just at a bus stop and they pulled up and they shot her, and the story behind John Muhammad's, he was after his ex-wife, and she was in the DC area, and he was, trying to set off this killing spree so that he could divert the police and then ultimately kill his ex-wife and take his kids back. Very, very riveting podcast to listen to. Like I said, having lived through that time, but not living in the DC area, I didn't fully understand, what kind of terror they inflicted on the people in that area. But going back and listening to it, this year was a trip. So if you get a chance, check out Monster DC Sniper. I'm sure it's on all platforms. I listened to it on Apple. Now let's get into some new joints that I picked up in 2020. First up, the Mirage podcast with my homegirl Ava. This one is, I want to say Ava started this podcast earlier this year, and I can't even remember how I connected with Ava, but I love this podcast, and I think she has like different people that she will interview, and it is a straight up interview. I mean, like she asks all the questions, and she does a really, really good job of asking questions. In fact, I have a question for Ava. I wonder if she's taken some type of or has some type of journalism background, because she asks questions as if she's a journalist. Her podcast can be found. The Mirage podcast is on all streaming platforms. If you follow the Mirage podcast on Instagram, I think you can see the podcast live, because from time to time she will actually post the actual podcast on the Instagram story or whatever. So yeah, definitely check that out, man. Really, really dope. And like I said, Ava does a great job of interviewing, the people that come on her podcast. Another one that I picked up this year, Tamara Till the Break of Dawn. Shout out to Tamara Dawn. I connected to her podcast through my homegirl, Autumn the Aries. Tamara is a single, podcaster, does her thing. Really, really dope podcast. She just talks about her life, and, it's no frills. It's, she doesn't hide anything. She, makes it very vulnerable, but, I enjoy listening to it. I think it's very refreshing to hear people, just kind of tell you not just about the days where everything is going great. They tell you about the times where they're struggling a little bit. And, she talks about her background and, some, I don't want to say issues, but, kind of things that parents deal with kids that I could relate to as well. Really, really dope podcast. You can find Tamara Till the Break of Dawn. She's on all platforms. Her podcast drops, just like the 12 Kyle podcast. It drops every Thursday. So check out Tamara Till the Break of Dawn. Another one that I came across this year from my homegirl Autumn the Aries is my homegirl J Boogs, Jay's Quick 3. Man, Jay's Quick 3, and if you've been listening to my podcast, obviously you heard Jay Boog on here as we did the three-peat of TLC podcast. I really like Jay Boog's podcast because it's called Jay's Quick 3. And that's all it is. She takes 3 different topics and she just talks about those 3 topics, and then she's out of there. Like she doesn't drag it along. She gets in and gets out. Real cool podcast. Very good, easy listen. Jay Boog like I said, over this period of time, I've gotten a chance to know her a little bit. Mad cool. And I mean, I think one of the things that is very interesting is that not only Jay Boog, but Tamara as well as Autumn, they are a part of a group, and they form this group, all single ladies who are podcasters, along with Chris, who is, what's Chris's podcast? It's called, it's on the tip of my tongue, as well as Audrey from Odd Tales. They formed a clique, if you will, the podcast happy hour. And they just get on and it's girl talk, but it's fellas, you can appreciate it and enjoy it. It's really, really funny. But yeah, shout out to all of those ladies. I enjoy, like I said, Jay's podcast. Her podcast is, I want to say, every Friday or every other Friday. Really, really dope podcast. And Jay Book had me on her podcast as well, so it was always good to chop it up with her. But yeah, definitely check that out. You can find that podcast on all streaming platforms. Next podcast, the Saturday series. I found the Saturday series actually because of, again, Autumn the Aries. Shout out to Autumn. Autumn put me on to the Saturday series, and I had never heard of it before. And what it is that the Saturday series it's a platform that allows you, the podcaster, to create a podcast, and then you send it to them and they play it on their platform. So basically you get on, you create a podcast episode. You talk about, growing up or what you did on Saturdays, early childhood, whatever the case may be. You send it to the Saturday series, and then, they upload it and they play it and they promote it. So I actually submitted one about growing up in the 80s and what Saturdays were like in my childhood. And it made it to their podcast as well. So it's really, really dope. If you get a chance, check that out. It's on all streaming platforms. And the great thing about it is it's not just one. So it's whoever has sent in the podcast. So each week you're going to have somebody different with their version of the Saturday series. Really, really dope concept. I like it a lot. And I really felt honored to be able to participate in it. And ironically, Autumn put me on, and Autumn said she was going to submit one for the Saturday series, and she has not. Nonetheless, you definitely check that out. Another one that I picked up on this year. Off the record, really, really dope podcast. 4 cats, and I think all of them grew up together, or they've been friends. 4 young brothers, and they talk about life. They talk about music. They talk about relationships, sports. Shout out to everybody on OTR. Definitely appreciate the love. I know they listen to my podcast as well. Really, really dope podcast. Check that out. They're on all streaming platforms. Off the Record usually comes out for some reason I see it in my feed every Monday. So I'm going to say Mondays. I subscribe, and for whatever reason it pops up on Monday. So I'm going to say Monday just to be on the safe side. Speaking of Mondays, my homegirl, me and this young lady go way back. Former blogger, good friend of the show, Amber Cabral. We call her Bam. Bam Cabral. Her podcast is called You Can Have Whatever You Want. And one of the interesting things about Bam's podcast is it's a like self-motivating type podcast, words of wisdom type podcast. But the podcast is only between 8 and 10 minutes long each week. And it drops every Monday. It is a great, great listen. Something to kind of get your mouth watering, and then it's over just that fast. But yeah, shout out to Bam. Me and Bam go way back. She just dropped a book as well. So congrats to her as well on the book. But check out her podcast. It's you can find that on all streaming platforms as well. What was another one I picked up this year? Flowers for the Culture. Flowers for the Culture by from Riri and my man Al Pete out of Jacksonville. Really, really dope podcast. The name fits. Flowers for the Culture. And that's what they're talking about. They're talking about, giving flowers to people and, time and moments of the culture that need to be celebrated. And I mean, honestly, after 2020, we probably should celebrate just about everybody is doing something. Really, really dope podcast that comes out weekly as well. So make sure that you check that out. And last but not least, as far as podcasts that I picked up on this year, the Vault Classic Music Review Podcast. Man, what can I say about this podcast? This is one of the dopest music podcasts that you will hear in 2020. Shout out to my boy B Cox, J.O. and Damo. They are over there. This podcast is where basically what they do is they take a look at music that has dropped and celebrate albums that have dropped in the last 20, 25, and 30 years respectively. So a lot of times what was really cool about this podcast was, especially this year, a lot of times some of the albums that I would review, because they were hitting 20 and 25 and 30 years, they were reviewing as well. So, nothing better than listening to music heads who know what they're talking about. This is definitely, a podcast that anybody that loves music should check out. And like I said, they know what they're talking about, man. So again, shout out to the crew, Damo, J.O., and my man B Cox. And B Cox, he was here on my podcast when we did Like Water for Chocolate by Common, celebrating 20 years on that. So really, really dope podcast. If you love music, you want to check that out, especially my hip hop heads, old school hip hop heads. You want to check that podcast out. You don't want to miss it. All right. So now let's get to some of the podcast staples. These are the joints that I'm listening to, that I've been listening to for at least over a year now. First up, my homegirl, Erica Jones, the E and Friends podcast. I love Erica's podcast. Erica's good people. She talks about a little bit of everything. From time to time, she will have her crew on, and it's always interesting to hear, young 30-something-year-old married and single black women talk about life and motherhood and, and men. But very, very interesting and fresh perspective. Erica's podcast is bi-weekly, so make sure that you check that out. It's called the E and Friends Podcast. It comes out, like I said, bi-weekly, and you can catch that on all streaming platforms. Next one, The Social Introvert from my boy Sid Davis. Man, Sid drops his joint every Wednesday and Thursday. Sid talks about pop culture. He talks about music, TV, movies. Sid talk. I don't know how Sid, and I think I told Sid this before, but I don't know how he does it. I mean, one, to drop 2 podcasts in a week, back-to-back days, and then, he actually found time to drop an album this year as well, man. So salute to my man Sid. Appreciate the shout out, and keep doing what you're doing, man. I really enjoy the podcast as always. That podcast, like I said, comes out every Wednesday and Thursday. Next, my folk, the Tagless Know-It-Alls podcast. They come out every Monday on all streaming platforms. Tagless Know-It-Alls is my boy Tyrone and his wife Mia. They are hilarious. And if you've heard me talk about them before, I've been on their podcast before. They, live here in Metro Atlanta. I've been to their house, hung out with them, several times. Me and my wife kicked it with them, been on the podcast, and just really great people, man. One of the funniest episodes that they did this year was they talked about how they had a guest come to their house, and the guest came to their house, and instead of turning on like a TV show or whatever, they're just kind of sitting around, and so the guest said, well, hey, can I play some music? And Mia said, okay, hey, I think she might have given him the remote or whatever. So he put it on his music channel, and the music that he was playing was like, I don't want to give it away, but the music was let's just say the music was foul. And Mia was extremely turned off. I could not stop laughing at this podcast because I know Ty and I know Mia. And I know how hard it was for them to hold it in and not say anything. But check them out, man. Every Monday, Tactless Know-It-Alls podcast. Again, that's my folks. So you'll definitely enjoy their podcast. We come from bad news. Nyaze and my boy Al Diddy. They drop. I think they've been gone. I can't really say for sure if they have been gone for a while this year, but I just know I stopped getting notifications of podcasts that were uploaded. But they are back. We come from bad news. That podcast usually is about 45 minutes or so. They talk about everything in pop culture and music as well. So two good brothers, man. You definitely want to check them out and vibe to their podcast. What else? Oh, how could I forget? If you want sports, look no further than Sports Talk Life podcast. They also run their show on YouTube as well. Man, when you're talking about high energy, B Jones and KT and the rest of the crew, they are the epitome of high energy. A lot of great sports talk, pop culture as well. You definitely want to check them out. I got a chance to kick it with them on their podcast and had a ball. So if you missed that episode, go to Sports Talk Life on YouTube and you can actually watch us record the podcast. Really, really dope podcast. Again, check that out. They drop each week. The podcast is recorded on YouTube every Wednesday. So make sure you check that out. And of course, sports. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my homie out in Seattle, my man Manny Brown, with the Any Given Sunday podcast. Manny drops his podcast every Sunday. It pops up in my feed on Monday, but it's every Sunday. Shout out to Manny, man, part of the Dead End Crew family. And of course, I can't forget my boys, the rest of the Dead End Crew. Dead End Sports. Dead End Sports drops a podcast every. Podcast is streamed live on YouTube every Tuesday or so, because this year flip-flop between Monday and Tuesday, and the podcast actually drops like later on the week, like on Friday. But shout out to the whole DES crew, Ken B, FIFO, and of course Q and Shelton. Shout out to everybody over there, and Nick. I can't forget about old disrespectful ass Nick. That's my dude. And of course, obviously, if I can't talk Dead End Sports without talking about the other function of the crew, is the mic still on? Another dope podcast that drops every Wednesday, so on all platforms. So check them out as well. What else? Who else? I'm going off the top. Don't want to leave nobody out. Oh, can't forget. I mentioned her already. The Lit Life podcast with my homegirl, Autumn the Aries. Man, Autumn's off the chain. Autumn has a segment on her podcast called the Shut the Fuck Up Award. And of course, when I listen to her podcast, in my head, every week, there's only one person in the world that gets the Shut the Fuck Up Award. And you guessed it. Duke. Duke, that resides at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Autumn's podcast is really, really dope. I mean, she's going to talk about a little bit of everything, her life, pop culture, music. I got a chance to be on her podcast a couple of times. I really, really enjoyed it. And her podcast is out Autumn is out every Friday. Every Friday, probably. I mean, the running time is usually about an hour. So, real cool, easy listen. Again, Autumn's good people. Real cool, mad cool. So, once we can, probably once we get over the Rona, we'll make an attempt to hang out somewhere. She's right here in Atlanta as well. Oh, and I cannot forget one of my favorite podcasts that actually they've been on hiatus, so they did not actually drop a podcast this year, but I'm still gonna shout them out anyway. But B and Maya, We Did That Shit podcast. You can check out their podcast. It's available on all platforms. I'm hopeful, fingers crossed, that the ladies will be back in 2021. But I would be remiss if I didn't shout them out. Those are my podcast cousins. They were actually on here as well, and I'll talk about that a little later. But still, you can go back and check out their podcast. Really, really dope. Really, really funny podcast as well. So shout them out. Who else? Oh, man. I can't forget. The Almighty Frocast podcast. With King Germ and Queen Germ. First and foremost, man, shout out to Queen Germ. She definitely carries the show. Oh man, but King Germ, man, what can I say about King Germ? King Germ is King Germ's my dude. But I'm starting to wonder like how King Germ is my dude because like, for example, King Germ likes University of Florida. I like Florida State. King Germ likes Tim Tebow. I don't like Tim Tebow. King Germ likes the Dallas Cowboys. Who in their right mind would like the Dallas Cowboys? King Germ likes that HBCU that's located in the city of Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm an alum of South Carolina State University. So I really don't know why I'm friends with King Germs, to be honest. But anyway, King Germs, King Germs, my dude. The Frocast podcast, man, hilarious podcast. Husband and wife team, King Germ and Queen Germ. They drop every Friday. The podcast usually about an hour and a half or so. Shout out to Be Easy who actually edits their podcast. If you want to laugh, if you want to see two married people, have a good time on the mic, it's these two. I will say sometimes King Germ says stuff that gets under Queen Germ's skin, and I'm not sure if she's like ready to bust him upside the head after they stop recording. And maybe she does bust him upside the head after they stop recording. I don't know. I might even text Germ to see if that actually happens. Cause some of that shit sounds too, none of their arguments, and they will argue on air, but none of their arguments sound contrived. Like it's just straight up. That's just how they are. But they've been married. They sound like two people who love each other. Two people who've been married for, I think they've been married, 16, 17 years, something like that. But yeah, Frocast, make sure that you check out that podcast. Like I said, it comes out every Friday, and it's on all platforms. Last but not least, podcast staple. I don't even know what to say about this dude. My man Eclectic, he has two podcasts. The Eclectic Discussion Podcast and the Encyclopedia Hip Hop Podcast. Now, if you listen to my podcast, Eclectic has been on here several times this year, to say the least. And I've been on his podcast probably about a gazillion times. So, yeah, man, we put a lot of stuff together, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But those are two podcasts, two dope podcasts that you definitely want to check out. All my hip hop heads, you want and need to listen to the Encyclopedia Hip Hop podcast. And for everything else, from childhood memories to whatever he sits and talks about, the Eclectic Discussion Podcast will cover that. So let me tell you about a few of the podcasts that I appeared on this year, in 2020. As I mentioned, I appeared on Autumn's Lit Life podcast, Jay's Quick 3 podcast. That was dope. As I mentioned earlier, the Saturday series, like I said, felt honored to be a part of that. Appeared on the Sports Life Talk Sports Talk Life, Sports Talk Life podcast. That was dope. And of course, Dead End Sports. That's my folk. That's where, that's family right there. And of course, the Encyclopedia Hip Hop podcast and the Eclectic Discussion podcast. The interesting thing about, and I'll just give you, just a little sneak peek. The interesting thing about the Eclectic Discussion podcast, one night, E and I don't even think, we might not even been recording. We might have just been talking. And he came up with an idea to do a fantasy draft. And he was like, yo, I could put this on the podcast. We just come up with these ideas as far as like, if we were going to have a draft, you pick 5 and I pick 5. And then we put up a Twitter poll and we put it up on IG and we let people decide who was the winner. And I gotta say, pretty damn good idea. And so what ended up happening was we ended up recording. I don't even know how many we've recorded. I want to say it's probably close to 20 podcasts, maybe. Just of fantasy drafts. So if you haven't heard those, I don't know how you couldn't have by now, but if for some reason you haven't heard those, go check out the Eclectic Discussion podcast, because I'm all over all of those. Check out his podcast anyway, but that just goes to show you, like, you just never know. Sometimes you could just be talking and an idea can come up, and next thing you know, you got a hit. So we should also talk about and recognize some of the guests that appeared on the 12 Kyle podcast. Let's see. Oh, my homegirl, Southern Love. She appeared on the We Got Issues podcast. That was a really dope one. We talked about relationships and marriage and finances and all kind of crazy shit. The homie Matt B came through for the best 5 hip hop debut albums and the Stankonia podcast, where we did a review of Outkast's Stankonia 20 years later. So shout out to Matt for coming through on that. The aforementioned Autumn the Aries. She came on and we did a music review of Jodeci's debut album, Forever My Lady. That was really, really dope. I enjoyed that because that album is phenomenal. And Autumn is just as big a fan of that album as I am. So it was really, really cool talking with her about that. As I mentioned earlier, Babi and Maya came through from the We Did That Shit podcast. We did a podcast called Friendly versus Flirting. That one was a lot of fun because I got a chance to get their perspective, 2 young women, get their perspective on what exactly is considered to be flirting, and, sometimes how our cues can get, misconstrued when we're trying to be friendly and we're actually flirting, or vice versa. That was a lot of fun. Loved having them on. As I mentioned earlier, my boy B Cox from the Vault Classic Reviews podcast, he came on and we did a review of Common's Like Water for Chocolate, which turned 20 years old this year. And that was dope. Just, 2 hip hop heads just, going back and forth. So I really enjoyed that one. My homeboy that I went to high school with, my boy Isan, he came through and we talked about 90s style and fashion. Loved that one, man. We had a really good time just talking about fashion. He models now, and I got a chance to pick his brain about, some things, not just outside of the 90s, but just, even today's current fashion, and maybe some, he gave me a couple of fashion tips. So who knows? I might be a little bit, I'm fly now, but I might be a little flyer in 2021. King Germ. King Germ came through for the Air Jordans podcast, where we talked about the shoe, man, the shoe, the Air Jordan shoe, our love for the shoes. I'm almost ashamed to say that since that podcast, I've purchased probably more Air Jordans than I should have, but they look so good on my feet. So I'm rolling. But yeah, shout out to Germ. That was a dope podcast. I got a chance to interview the homie, Mr. Al Pete. Al came through, and I just picked his brain just about music and hip hop and culture. Al is a very popular DJ down in Jacksonville, Florida. And it's good having a brother on, man. I really enjoyed that and got a lot of great responses from that, and people really enjoyed listening to him. I'm going to try to have more people on in 2021 where I actually can interview them. Actually, I'm probably going to have more people on in general just because that seems to resonate a little bit with people that listening. So I'm definitely going to do that as well. Who else? Oh, how can I forget? My childhood crew, D Love Hall and Easy Does It VA. They came through and we talked a little NBA. What we did was we did a redraft of the 1996 draft. And I think we only went through the first 14 picks. But that was fun because if you're familiar with the NBA, the 1996 draft was arguably one of the best, and some might say the best, NBA drafts ever. That was a draft where Allen Iverson was drafted first. Steve Nash was in that draft. Ray Allen, Marcus Camby, and a little guy out of a high school in Pennsylvania by the name of Kobe Bean Bryant. You might have heard of him. Just to name a few. Great draft class, and yeah, so it was good. It was dope talking with them about that. As I mentioned earlier, Jay Boog from Jay's Quick 3 came on, and we talked about TLC, the Three-Peat. The Three-Peat is a series that I also introduced this year, where we take an artist's first 3 albums and we just compare it and see, and talk about how hard it is for an artist to make 3 arguably phenomenal albums. Some might even call them classics, back to back to back. And Jay Boog came on and we talked about TLC's run of 3 albums, their first 3 albums. So that was really, really dope. I enjoyed that as well. And last but not least, Eclectic. He was on here. I guess probably the easiest thing is to say is like, what didn't we talk about? Because we kind of talked about a little bit of everything. We did a podcast on the best R&B albums from the 90s. We did a 30-year review of Belle Biv DeVoe's Poison album. We did a 25-year review on The Infamous by Mobb Deep. We did a podcast on the 95 Source Awards. That one was hilarious. We did a 25-year review of Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links. We did a 25-year review of Faith's debut album, Faith. We talked about the god-awful Rolling Stone top 5 hip-hop albums. We made that a podcast. And we did a 30-year review of LL's Mama Said Knock You Out. So, yeah, I mean, between my podcast and Eclectic's 2 podcasts, I don't know how many podcasts we did this year together. I'll say this, man. I mean, and somebody, I can't remember who it was, and I'm sure you'll remind me on Twitter. Somebody said we're the Nas and AZ of podcasting. And I took that as a huge compliment. Because like we just, we get in and we just chop it up. I mean, it's like, it's always authentic. And Eclectic's probably one of the, as much as I know about music, Eclectic's probably one of the few people that know way more music than I do. Like, I'm amazed at some of the stuff that he knows and remembers, because like half of that shit I can't remember. Like, but we come from that era where that's all we had, so we would just gravitate toward music. So yeah, we're 2 music heads, man, and he's a funny dude. He's a funny dude, and we just, I think this year we just kind of, it became like almost like kind of like rappers, like where you just go in and you just do songs and you just knock them out and you know that they're dope, and then you just can't wait to hear them back. And he's always cooking up something, and I'm always cooking up something, and we bounce ideas off each other all the time. And this year was incredible for us. So for us to be the Nas and AZ of the podcast game, I'll take that. I'll definitely take that, man. So shout out to E. That's it, to be honest. I've rambled long enough. As I mentioned at the intro, check out these podcasts, everybody. I'm pretty sure that you will find something that you will like. If you listen to one of these podcasts that I mentioned and you say, oh, they're whack, tell me about it, because I don't think that they are. I think everybody's really, really dope. And again, if I forgot you, please charge it to the game. Or maybe I haven't gotten around to your podcast just yet, but I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I'm constantly being inspired by others, as well as I push myself to, really just come up with dope shit. I don't really, honestly, I've been doing this, and it didn't dawn on me until like yesterday. I actually hit the 5-year mark on this podcast. I think that's cool. I'm happy that I've hit 5 years. I didn't set out to be a podcaster for 5 years, but it's been dope, man. And all I want to do is keep making dope shit. That's it. I don't need nothing much more than that, just to keep making dope podcasts and putting shit out that people really enjoy. And that's the goal. So that's gonna do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again for checking out the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. This has been what's in your ears for 2020. I'll catch you guys next time. 5Gs.
If you work in university maintenance, Grainger considers you an MVP because your playbook ensures your arena is always ready for tip-off. And Grainger is your trusted partner, offering the products you need all in one place, from HVAC and plumbing supplies to lighting and more. And all delivered with plenty of time left on the clock, so your team always gets the win. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, visit Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
When you manage procurement for multiple facilities, every order matters. But when it's for a hospital system, they matter even more. Grainger gets it and knows there's no time for managing multiple suppliers and no room for shipping delays. That's why Grainger offers millions of products in fast, dependable delivery, so you can keep your facility stocked, safe, and running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.